was that, like a Glock? A Glock 40,
yeah.
and that she jumped in front of it and basically saved his life, so she should get some sort of humanitarian award.
My thing is, I don't even know what these guys are getting out of it from lying. You know what I mean? You're not getting nothing out of it.
Well, what we ultimately found out during the deposition was that Steve, right, the alleged victim in your case, that at the time he was on probation for armed robbery and beating someone with a firearm, and that he was in fact sentenced as a juvenile, charged as an adult in front of the same judge, Judge Johnson, that you were in front of.
Yeah, which was a very weird coincidence to me.
So he had gone to a juvenile facility and had been there for a few years, must have gotten out, and then was following probation, I guess, until his 21st birthday, and he could have easily been charged with battery on a minor, right, child abuse, violating his probation, which he's facing at least a first-degree felony if it's an armed robbery, with a 10-year minimum mandatory sentence. So there's a whole bunch of reasons for his sister to lie, his mother to lie, and family members to lie. But the sister, Tanisha, she never showed up. She didn't respond to our depots. She didn't respond to the state attorney's calls. We couldn't get her in, and she's really the one that could have made the difference in the case to say, listen, my brother had a knife at the time. And the whole fact is, like you said, we don't know why he would go through all of these efforts to lie, because his probation has already terminated. So he's free and clear. He couldn't have been charged with the crime after the fact, and he wouldn't have done any time, even if he pulled a knife, even if all the allegations were true that he was beating up the 15-year-old.
Which didn't make any sense to me. Even for Tanisha, I didn't understand why the sister, I didn't understand why didn't she choose to come in and try to make things right. I've never done anything to her. You know what I'm saying? We don't have any bad blood, so I didn't understand why not just come in and just tell the truth anyways. You know what I mean? Just say, hey, yeah, my brother did have a knife. You know what I'm saying? We felt as a family that if the truth would have came out, he probably would have went to jail, but come to find out, we see that that's not the case. So I just wanted to come and just be honest and just say that this is the true story and this is exactly what happened. And hopefully I can save, Stellan's life. But it didn't work out that way.
So ultimately, the end result was that after going back and forth with this prosecutor, Berlin, who really turned out to be one of the best prosecutors I've ever dealt with, because he could have easily just said, okay, the statute says 3 years adjudication, you become a convicted felon, and you do your 3 years prison. Because he went through the same stresses of trying to get these people together, ultimately he went to a supervisor, and we kept going back and forth, and he changed the mandatory minimum sentence of 3 years prison and gave you a 5-year probationary sentence with a withhold of adjudication, so you're not a convicted felon. It's still not, even in my book, like I told the judge, this isn't the perfect situation. This is the hardest thing for a defense attorney to do, is to plead someone that you feel is innocent, but if John don't show up, right, John's a big brother to Sydney. So Sydney's a minor. How's Sydney going to get around? How are we going to get in touch with Sydney if we can't get in touch with John, right? The guy, I don't know his first name, I think his first name is Morris, who's in custody right now. We got to get a special order from him, from the judge, to bring him into trial. And all he can say is, I didn't see anything, even though he was involved in the whole fight. He didn't see anything, but he heard the family talking about, hey, you shouldn't have pulled the knife, and then he wouldn't have pulled the gun. Exactly. So that was the only statement we could have got from him, but then it would have been delayed more. And then the biggest problem is in this case is if we lost, then the judge would sentence you to,
3 to 5 years.
And
I was not trying to do it.
So, the good thing is you're not convicted. The bad thing is that you had to plead no contest, and we did it as an Alford plea, basically a best interest. You never said you're guilty, because usually if you say no contest, you're doing this because, you were
guilty.
But that's not the case in York. But no one really ever reads that except, if you were famous, it'd be in the newspapers. You're not famous, I'm not famous, so it ain't going to be in the newspapers. But hopefully telling the people, young people, college students and high school students about the situation that happened. Why did you even have a firearm?
I have a firearm because I feel like I need to protect myself. You know what I mean? from where I grew up and the things I've seen, I grew up where every other night somebody was getting shot.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
Right off of 31st.
Okay, so you grew up in a bad area.
I grew up in a bad area. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I told myself when I got older, I was going to get a firearm to protect myself. And then after, you know what I'm saying, me getting older, I had my first son, who's now 5 years old. And I felt like I got a family now, so I got to protect them at any means necessary. This is a crazy world. I'm just be speaking, you know what I mean? So,
I mean, and it turns out that, you know, the situation, you know, we don't know what would have happened if you didn't have that firearm. Whether or not you would have got stabbed, whether or not John would have got stabbed, whether or not Sidney would have got stabbed. Sidney was already bleeding, but
yeah,
you didn't.
I didn't know if he.
And he said he's got a knife.
But yeah, and he said he got a knife. So just imagine if I didn't have my firearm that day to wheel him off, like to scare him away. So who knows? I probably would have been dead by now. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, that's the hardest part of this case. You know, if we would have filed a stand your ground motion or made stand your ground, which is, you know, a rule in the state of Florida about you protecting yourself or others, the state wasn't going to let us do that. And what I mean by that is that if we filed that motion, right, then the state would have withdrawn their probationary offer. And if we lost that motion, well, then only opportunity we have is trial. And like we said, we don't have any witnesses because you didn't know any of these people. All these people are together, but the only person that you have is John, who you hadn't seen in a while because you don't live here. And so what are your thoughts on that? I mean, now you've been through the criminal justice system. What would you say to other young men that talk about buying a firearm to protect themselves?
I'm gonna say I'm not totally against it, even though I'm going through this process right now. But I would say make sure you take your courses, make sure you get your concealed weapon, and only use it in a very, very dangerous manner. If you feel like you're about to die, only option is death. That is the only time I would tell you to use it. But besides that, hey man, don't use it because trust me, it's not worth it.
Because you easily could have been telling this story from inside a Florida State prison.
Trust me, man. On gangland or something. You know what I mean?
So, well, listen, man. I told you this when we started going back and forth with the plea. You know, this is probably like hitting a double in baseball. The good things are you're not in prison.
Yeah, of course.
And the other good thing is you're not a convicted felon.
Yeah.
We talked about the odds of you getting a job are slim to none with an ag-assault firearm on, you know, because it's a violent crime.
Yeah.
Every time you get pulled over by police, they're going to be on high alert. And that can mean different things for different officers, right? We were talking about on the way back from court. There's good officers, there's bad officers. But people are going to protect themselves before they worry about you. So if they do a David check and run your plate and see that you have an ag-assault firearm, think how they're going to come over to your door. Those are the, I guess, the potholes, the rough roads that you're going to thing. And, you know, my last prayer on this case is that you get a good probation officer. Someone who, you know, isn't on a power trip, someone who's truly there to help you, guide you. And at 2.5 years, you've had no problems, and we can
Try to get a termination.
yeah, try to do an early termination.
It's 5 years. In 5 years, I'll be 30. I just want everybody to do that. I'll be 30 years old. You know what I mean? And it's just not a good feeling now.
So, do you regret pulling the gun on that day?
Honestly, yes. Honestly. I feel like I should have ran, if anything. I should have just ran because just the long process of 1.5 years, almost 2 years, coming to court every month, not knowing if you're going to go to jail or if you're looking at prison time, if you don't know if you're going to see your family again, your kids, just knowing like at any given moment you can go to trial and these guys, you know what I'm saying, can just take away your life. You can be facing 3 to 5 years. It's not a good feeling. You know what I mean? It's a lot of stress, mental stress and physical stress on your body. It was nights where I just couldn't sleep. You know what I mean? When it came closer to trial, I couldn't sleep. I just stressed out, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. You know what I mean? It's just a big stressful situation, and you don't want to go through that. You don't.
stressful on my side too.
Yeah,
Because
he has to keep me out of jail, out of prison. So, you know what I mean? You don't want to see nobody go down.
Especially